Welcome everybody to Pooley Mag TV on this fine Thursday morning. The sun is shining and I'm feeling absolutely fantastic. Alexander Isak is set to stay at Newcastle with the wage structure being obliterated. Now I am absolutely over the moon with this news. I think it's right. It's only right that he should be the highest paid player at the club. It's only right that we try to keep our best players. I know Champions League will help, but surely winning the League Cup and at least getting Europe will help this. Alexander Isak, Bruno Guimaraes, Tonali, Botman, Gordon, Joe Linton, Livramento, Hall, all of these players, we need to keep these players to progress. And Alexander Isak, for me, is the best striker in the Premier League at the minute, and by far one of the best strikers in Europe. And for us to challenge for titles, and for us to challenge for Champions League spots, and for us to hopefully progress into challenging for Champions Leagues, and challenging for league titles, and FA Cups, and League Cups, and Charity Shields, and all them things, we need to keep Alexander Isak. We need to keep him. He is electric. He will win us games when we aren't playing well. He will score bags and bags of goals. Just imagine Isak with another 3 or 4 world-class players around him. Our squad growing, our squad getting bigger. It could only do him the world of good. He's bagging 20-odd goals a season now. We've still got Sean Longstaff and Lascelles, people like that in the squad. What would happen if we had a squad like, say, Arsenal's or Man City's? Player for player, like for like. How good would Isak be then? We need to keep this player at Newcastle. And at PIF need to do whatever they can to give him the wages that he needs to stay here. Now, all wages are astronomical now. None of them are nobody's really worth the money that they're on. But if we're gonna play that game and we are gonna dole out loads of money, then Alexander Isak should be at the top of the list. Whatever Erling Haaland's on, Alexander Isak needs to be on. Because Alexander Isak is as good, if not better, than Erling Haaland. In my opinion. This is what needs to happen at Newcastle United. To keep Alexander Isak here. It also gives an incentive for other world-class players to come and think, oh, Newcastle actually do pay big bucks. Isak's staying, Bruno's staying, Tonali's staying. These are players I'd like to play with. They're in the Champions League. They've just won a trophy. Oh, this seems like an exciting prospect. When you're finishing 8th, 9th, and you're not paying the right wages, players go. Top players go. You see it at the likes of West Ham. You see it at the likes of Everton. You see it at the likes of Wolves. As soon as they get a top player that has a good season, they're gone. And that's what used to happen to us. We'd get a season or two out of them, and then Chelsea or Man City would swoop in, and boom, there you go. We'd be back to the drawing board, buying players for 5 million, hoping to get a gem or hoping to steal somebody on a free. Well, we're not that club no more. We don't need to be that club anymore. Yes, we need to be stringent and frugal to match PSR, but we do not need to sell our best players to progress. We don't need to do that anymore. That is a fact. Alexander Isak loves playing for Newcastle. We love him playing for Newcastle. Why would you want to leave us? Why would you want to leave us? So I'm absolutely over the moon. I watched the Toon Review yesterday, and I give great props to the Toon Review. That's a fantastic YouTube channel. And they say that Newcastle are finally willing to break their structure to keep Isak. I'm over the moon with that news. I really am. I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic that Newcastle are now setting that marker down to say, look, we're the top club too. You aren't cherry picking our best players no more. We're the top club too. Why would you want to go anywhere else? Where would you go? Where would you go over us? Man U? Tottenham? No. Villa? No. Arsenal's a sideways move these days. Liverpool, maybe to replace Mo Salah. But why would you go there? Why would you go there if you're winning trophies for Newcastle? The only way Alexander Isak is going to leave Newcastle is if we start finishing 10th and we don't start investing in this squad. That's the only way Alexander Isak will leave. If we're in Europe every season and we're challenging every season, Alexander Isak has no reason to leave unless Real Madrid come in for him. And I would wave him off at the airport and say, thank you, Alex. Well done. But I couldn't watch Alexander Isak in a Man City shirt or an Arsenal shirt. Why would he want to? Why would he want to? He's playing in front of the best fans in the world, which segues into my next point. The new stadium. How fantastic is the new stadium going to be, by the way, guys? You know, the new stadium is going to be absolutely fantastic. You know, 65,000, they could double that really, couldn't they? You know, they'd get Barcelona-like crowds at Newcastle, and I know they would. But 65,000, and I've seen the plans for the stadium, it looks absolutely fantastic. You know, that is a state-of-the-art stadium. I know it's not going to be St James's Park, and that holds heavy on me too. You know, some of my best football memories were going to St James's Park with my dad, with my auntie, you know, family. I've done the stadium tour with my mum and my son. You know, all them great memories that St James's Park has brought us, you know. But we've got to try and compete with the big boys. We've got to try and compete with them. And if we can't build on St James's Park, we need a new stadium. You know, I'm all for progress. You know, the old saying is there's no sentiment in football, and it's right. You know, look at Everton. They're getting a new stadium, Goodison Park. How many great memories must Everton fans have had at Goodison Park? You know, West Ham at Upton Park. You know, things move on. Manchester United are getting a new stadium. We need a new stadium. We need more revenue to compete with the big boys. We need more revenue to compete with the likes of Manchester City, the likes of even still Manchester United, who are absolutely garbage. But they still are bringing a lot more revenue than us, don't they? You know, and that's what we need. We need a new stadium. What would you like it to be called? What would you like the stadium to be called? I have no ideas at the minute, but I would really like some engagement on this post. You know, for people that's some ideas about. What would you like it to be called? You know, I think it's a great move. It's bringing in more money, you know, which equals better players and equals good times. You know, I know Arsenal struggled for the first few years after building a new stadium. We know Arsenal. We're not going to struggle. We've got money. And when we allow to spend it, watch what happens. You know, the Premier League will not know what to do with us once we are allowed to spend some money. And getting a new stadium allows us to spend some money. You know, and I know, like you say, St James's Park holds a dear place in everybody's heart who's a Newcastle fan. And even a lot of away fans love coming to St James's Park. They say it's their second home. You know, that it's their second team. It's their favourite stadium, apart from their home stadium. You know, things like that. But we need to move forward. Tottenham now. Look how state-of-the-art their stadium is. I know they're shit on the pitch, but look how state-of-the-art their stadium is. We need a stadium like that to compete, lads and lasses. We do. We just do. This is what we need to move forward. We keep Isak. Keeping Bruno. Keeping Gordon. Keeping Hall. Keeping Livramento. Keeping Botman. Keeping Joe Linton. Keeping Tonali. And a new stadium. Winning trophies. Why wouldn't big players want to come to that? That sounds exciting to me. Why wouldn't you want to come to that? Anyway, hit like and subscribe. You know, this is a new fledgling channel. You know, I am unedited. I am raw. I speak my mind. I swear. I don't swear. You know, I don't have a great camera. I'm not going to be, you know, I'm not trying to be something. I'm just a fan speaking his mind. So hit like, subscribe, and comment a stadium name that you think would be good. Over and out, Mag TV.